Well, it's March the 11th of 2025. And with the snow still melting and the bees only beginning to fly out of their hives, this is a great time to take a moment to invite a couple of friends to a Zoom session so we can catch up and share some beekeeping practices and observations. I hope you'll enjoy listening to our conversation. Here's Jeff Horchoff and Randy McCaffrey. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is the way to be. Oh, you know what? Annette messed it up. I was supposed to have my Randy mug.
Oh, what do you mean?
She brought
Supposed
me
to have
a.
you ready?
See, where's yours, Jeff? Where is it?
Boy, this is
I
something
know
else.
you've got one. Where's that? Does it? Hang on. We got 2 minutes. I'm gonna get my other mug.
Yeah, look, Randy, you got your play button back there. He's got his play button. I ain't got squat.
I know. I moved it just so it would be prominent.
Let's hold our mugs up and then do this. And this is gonna be the picture for the thumbnail. Mr. Ed, it'd be cool if you had like a t-shirt that would promote your company or something. Oh wait, you do. Okay.
I'm wearing the Frederick's Classic
Why is that called the Frederick's Classic?
because it was the classiest looking hat we had, and we had to name it after somebody.
Is that real? That's not true.
Hey, look at our website.
Is it really? That's not
Yeah.
true.
That's true. 100%.
If that's true, as soon as we get off, I'm ordering one.
Go check it. It's on there.
So here we are at our first annual unplanned gathering of amazing beekeepers and me. And so I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves in the off chance that there's one person out there who doesn't know who you are. And I'll start off. We'll do alphabetical order. So I'm Fred. You know that already because you're watching this YouTube channel. But we have Mr. Ed and we have Randy. So Jeff, tell us who you are, where you are, what you do.
Okay, well, my real name is Jeff Horchoff, right? But nobody knows who I am by Jeff Horchoff. If you watch YouTube, it's always Mr. Ed. And I will have to say this, Fred, that the question that's probably one of the most asked questions I get is, why do you call yourself Mr. Ed? And what's the answer there, Fred? Do you know why I'm called Mr.
The
Ed?
theme song.
Well, this when I got a job at the post office, there was a fine tradition of, as new employees come into the office, they get a name. And as soon as you walk in the door, you get a name. Well, they already knew my last name was Horchoff. And so you can see Horchoff, horse, you can extrapolate that through there. And and so the connection of a horse, right? And so then when you put these fine snugs into the picture, and it's just a natural. Then the laughing, it's Mr. Ed, and so I was called Mr. Ed when I first started working at the post office, and when I love the name so much that when I started my YouTube channel, that's what I called myself, Mr. Ed. And I keep bees for a group of Benedictine monks in Covington, Louisiana. We run about 150 hives, and I'm happily married to my sweet, beautiful wife, Mona.
That's everything? That's the whole list right
Yeah,
there?
that ought to be enough. They should know that.
All right. So next is Randy.
Happy Friday. The way to be. Way to be mug.
The way to be.
My name is Randy McCaffrey. Go by 628 DirtRooster or Rooster or whatever on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all those others. Primarily do bee removals, but I do a lot of beekeeping as well. And that's about all you really need to know about me. Is I'm a beekeeper that does bee removals. I'm a contractor that does bee removals.
So you're married, you're a
just made 33 years married.
That's impressive. That's impressive. Okay, so what people really should understand is we're completely unplanned here. We're flying by the seat of our pants, but I have Jeff asked me if I had any pre-organized questions ready to go, and I said no. We're just going to fly by the seat of our pants. So this is my list.
Did you just make those questions up right before we went on?
I did. Yeah. I did.
That's what you
While I was
told me.
waiting for my water to heat up in my support your local beekeepers cup, which is from Dirt Rooster, Randy McCaffrey.
There you go.
You guys got the merch.
Got a plug right there. Well, and two of us have play buttons in the background. Jeff forgot his. I think he keeps it on the dash of his car, so people can see it.
Well, Fred, I really feel like I should have just stayed at the office today and gone live, but I had to come home and do some work, so I came home.
It's
You know,
okay.
Jeff told me he wasn't going to have his, so mine was on the wall over there. I moved it into a prominent position right below my Neil Diamond album.
Below your Neil Diamond album. Wow, you do have a Neil Diamond album.
Yeah.
I don't have
There's a
Diamond
few of them up there.
That's cool. What is your favorite song by Neil Diamond?
Oh, I like them all.
You like them all. I haven't heard of that one yet, but I'll bet
Elizabeth doesn't like him, so I like them all.
Okay, so we know each other because of Kamon Reynolds. So we should probably thank Kamon Reynolds.
That's not no.
That's not true.
No. Fred, I watched your videos way before I met you at Hive Live.
I know, but he brought us together.
I was a subscriber way before Hive Life.
We weren't talking to each other.
Right. Well, no, because I even back in those days prior to Hive Life, when you would respond, comment on my videos. In fact, I know it. I called Randy once or twice, said, Fred Dunn responded on my videos. Like, and you look like you were like this safari guy. It's like, so impressive, man. And like, man, I can't believe Fred Dunn responded to a comment, made a comment.
Yeah, I know. It's like looking through the fence.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I don't think I'm pretty sure nobody watching is interested in those stories. So the cool thing though is when we did get put on stage, again, unplanned, unscheduled, we just find out cutouts and cut-ups. And they put us on stage, and it was like we had been friends forever, and that's kind of the way it's been ever since. Yeah. Tonight's conversation is not going to be just a bunch of fun because you guys are a wealth of knowledge. I mean, you do things I don't do, so we're complementing each other. I'm kind of scientific, nitty-gritty, tiny stuff where I can carry my cup of coffee and sit in the comfort of a shed and look at bees. You guys are out engaging bees in a way very few people do. I know you're friends also with JP the Bee Man.
Yeah.
Is he still creating content?
He's not really. He says he is, and he says he's going to start back. But every time I ask him, is he going to put out another video? He says, I got to go to the hunting camp. So,
well, he is. And that's a shame because he had a huge following, right?
Yeah,
really successful. So it's no secret we're all three YouTubers and influencers, but at the core of it all, we're really trying to teach people about bees and the things that we find. And what I'm really curious about and always searching for is the information regarding what bees do when they're on their own. So you guys are in that all the time. And in preparation for today, of course, I looked at a couple of your videos. I made my list of questions and criticisms.
Very good.
So we're just going to go down the line a little bit, but and it's not to pick on you, of course. Asking questions is the only way we're going to learn. And the other thing that's cool about us, and I want people to know, because it's about accepting or understanding or being open to a lot of different ways of doing the same thing. So at the core of it's keeping bees. And I think Randy he treats his bees. Is that right? If they have issues, varroa mites, nothing? You don't treat? What? And Jeff does not treat. And I'm the only one that's going to get spitballs shot at him at this. Okay.
Yeah, but Fred, and I understand it. I always say that here in the southeastern part of the United States, for some reason, I'm not saying we don't have mites, but our mite load is not as big as in other areas of the United States. It just isn't. I mean, we have mites, but they're not as problematic as particularly on the East Coast, and or out there. We have mites, but not to the degree of where it is, and whether that's our climate, the humidity. I don't know what the thing is, but it is not as bad, and that may be why we have such an explosion of bees that don't live in boxes but in people's houses.
And you know what? There could be a lot to that. In other words, up here, just like the chickens and other stuff, they're locked in together for an extended period of time. They're in the hives. We went from Thanksgiving to last week, snow covered.
Right.
So they are under different stresses as far as inside the box. The question is, man, you blew my point because I was about to say that we're kind of mixed together here, but I'm the only one, and I use oxalic acid vaporization when I need to. And before that, I didn't do anything. And you had said something, Jeff, a while ago where the people in your area that practice miticides and treatments and IPM and all this other stuff have pretty much the similar losses to you.
Yes.
So treatment, not treatment, you kind of ended up with the same at the end. The only difference is someone else risked having something in their colony that probably shouldn't be there chemical wise if they went on with the more advanced or even synthetic chemicals, right?
I would always stand by that. If someone chooses the option of treating their bees, well, they should. They should have that right to do it because they feel they are doing the right thing for their bees. Well, that's how I feel. I feel I'm doing the right thing for our bees.
Well, and if you suffered big losses, you'd start to take another look at it.
Exactly.
Right.
And I can't honestly say if that would be true, Fred, because I'm not. I always figure I can make up. That what we lose, I can make up because we do cutouts and catch swarms.
Do you guys actually belong to bee clubs down there?
Yeah.
What's the feedback like this year on survival? You guys would know that already down there, right? Randy, you have anything
survival rate's high down here. Yeah.
The what is?
It's high. There's not a lot of loss down here.
Not a lot of loss. Are we talking about small scale, sideline, commercial?
Talking about everything from 2 hives to 20,000 colonies. So and of course, those larger breeders or those larger keepers that I know that are not, I mean, they're not down here, but they come down here to raise queens, and their losses this year were, last year, the biggest one that I hang out with, his losses last year was in the 70% range, and this year more in the 35%.
Okay.
So he's,
what the state, you're in Gulfport, Mississippi. What's the Mississippi average loss rate statewide?
I couldn't tell you.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Jeff, Louisiana?
I don't know that either. I know in the two clubs that I'm in, nobody is seeing the losses that are everybody else that 70, 80%. No, but I'm not hearing that. We have some particular losses right now due to that Carolina Jasmine, that because that's the only thing that was blooming. The bees were feeding on it, and so we had some die-offs from that. But it doesn't.
Oh, is that what Mike Berry was recently talking about?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a toxic plant.
Yes, yeah.
And do you have that where you are, Randy?
Yeah.
So how prevalent is the plant? Like, are you really worried about it?
It's all over the place. It's an early bloomer, and it's all over fence rows and stuff. And I don't know if it's a non-native species, but it's been around as long as I can remember. And I don't think I've ever seen a bee on it.
Well, Mike, world famous Mike Berry actually showed a bee in the Carolina.
Yeah, one bee, and he hit it with his camera, which I thought was a little rude.
I've tried to get him on video working Jasmine, and I've never seen a bee on it. Never seen a honeybee on it.
Mike made the comment, and I agree with it. And Randy just said it. The Jasmine is an early bloomer, so if it's the only flower that's blooming, they may work it. But right now we have an abundance of what I'm seeing right now of other sources of nectar for the bees. And the hives that I went through today, I've got nectar coming in 40% of them. I've got nectar already in the boxes
Mm.
right now. So it's not there's stuff. Um, we really do live in an area. I know I do, Randy too. But there's just it's just a very good habitat for bees. It really is.
Have you guys ever looked into beescape.org? Have you ever looked up your location?
No, I never heard of that.
Me either.
Beescape.org. What is that?
It's just for the listeners and those who might be unfamiliar, beescape.org. You put in your location and you'll see what the habitat quality is for the bees and whether or not there's a dearth and what times of year it happens and what big agriculture is going on in your area and what kind of pesticides might be in use. And so they have a grade scale for pesticide loading and things like that. It also identifies habitat for feral colonies. So in other words, if your bees flew away and were not tended, how much habitat is suitable for honeybee
Who
occupation.
gives them their data?
Pardon?
Who
Well, a
gives
lot
them
of
their
the
data?
data this is actually really interesting because it's a little creepy because they even know the plants that are growing on your property. Satellite imagery shows the kind of foliage and terrain that there is. It shows waterways. They also tie that in with climate. So how much
Uh,
rainfall you get, how cold it gets. And the pesticide loading is reported by farmers because they have to. When they're going to use it, they have to register it and they have to identify what they're using. So that ends up impacting pollinators also. So they have that scale. So like where I am, I'm at about a 41 as far as the pesticide use goes. And just go 15 minutes north and they're at 241.
Good.
And that's where I have a test hive sitting in my son's yard, and they're dead this year. So he
I'm
lost
always,
he lost
I'm, al-
100% of his bees.
who did your son?
Yeah, which is one
Uh,
hive. So, and we were hoping they wouldn't make it.
oh, one.
They were
Okay.
stinging everybody, and I said, you know what? Let's just
Oh, wow.
out here and see what they do.
Now, I'm
So,
always curious when somebody starts giving numbers on feral colonies, and I know that the numbers probably came from some university study, and they don't deal with feral colonies. So I'm just curious where
well,
they get
no,
that
it's
information.
feral colony habitat. So, in other words,
Yeah.
how much standing timber is there? What kind of timber is it? And is it old growth? You know, things like that that
Well,
bees
that's the
find a bee
yeah,
tree.
that's the kind of thing that I wonder about because in our experience, and I know Jeff would probably agree with me on this, the habitat uh, is heavily reliant on urban development and not old growth because bee trees are compared to houses.
Yeah.
It's super rare.
Yeah, they don't count the houses in
Yeah.
that. Now, where you are, now that's also interesting because we're going to get into that, by the way, because I watched that. But um, bees moving in houses is more rare here than there. And a lot of it, I look at the construction of the places that you guys are getting into. I watched that video where you were in a house that was constructed in the 20s, and you guys were pulling out lapboard inside instead of doing the stucco on the outside.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting because I also noticed when you cut open that wall, there was no insulation in there.
Mm-mm.
So there are some structures down there that you wouldn't find here at all. They just couldn't handle the severe
Yeah.
climate. So the homes are
Right.
built a little different. But what I want to do is I want to jump into Jeff's video here real quick because it had a lot of interesting things for me. I'm starting this year. I'm going to test out a Top-Bar Hive, and that's because I met with one of the Top-Bar people, and Natalie B from Be Mindful, and she's big on treatment-free beekeeping. It goes all over the world and helps people in Africa and everything. But Jeff happened on a hive I want to talk about that had been in place for 14 years untouched, and it's a Top-Bar hive that was kind of crumbling away. And what's really cool about that, from my perspective, is we've got an untouched colony, and I wanted to see if any of the things that we think happens in a colony that's on its own were occurring in that one, and actually it didn't. Because one of the things we think in a bee tree, for example, up here, if the bees left or died or whatever happened to them, we would have wax moth larvae in there. So the wax worms would chew up and cycle out the old comb. So that's why when a new colony moves in spring, when there's a swarm, we get a bunch of new comb. And so all that dark brood comb has been cycled out. But that particular Top-Bar hive, it looked like it was never totally cleaned out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that Top-Bar
It
hive?
was because I did find evidence of the wax moth in there.
Oh,
So
good. You didn't talk about it in your video.
no, I know I saw some in there, but there was a lot of that comb that could have easily been 5, 6, 7 years old. I
Okay.
mean, it's iron rock hard.
So did
You know,
you get, how old did you think? I know they told you, you kind of almost dismissed the idea that they had been in there for 14 years, but
I don't believe that.
you don't think so.
No, no.
But
I
it is, okay, go
a
ahead.
hive. Nobody had tended that hive, but it's so rare for a hive to last, 5 years down here. It just cycles through, and another one's going to move in. I mean, I've seen that too many times. I
Mhm.
think 5 years, and Randy, you probably agree with me on that. Five
Mhm.
years is a long time for the same colony of bees, whether they swarmed or whatever, to
Right.
still remain in one spot.
So
Yeah.
do you think it actually needs to be unoccupied for a spell so that it can be cleaned up and then they can cycle in a new colony with new comb?
I
I
don't know
think
that it needs to be. I'm not on board with the cells get too small for them to work. I don't think there is a too small in the time frame that we're seeing, and probably the longest I've ever seen colony in a space that I know didn't die out and get chewed out and start over again was the one. Actually, Fred, you called me on it, and I sent you a picture of a tape measure on the bottom of it. That hive had been in there since Hurricane Katrina, and it could have had a die out, but the comb never got chewed out, so it was instantly repopulated if it died out.
Mhm,
But that one was what 18 years old or something at that point.
mhm.
And I've seen two or three like that, but it's pretty rare. They usually do die out and get chewed out and start over, and you can see the divots in the wood or wax moth chrysalis or frass in the bottom board or something.
Hmm.
I say bottom board, it's sheetrock or what, it's their bottom board.
Right. And those bottom spaces usually, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, the bottom was pretty clean, right? They keep that pretty
it
clean
was
up.
clean. They, typical of Top-Bar hive that the comb will just break off because of the excessive heat
Yeah, you
and
explained that and it'll fall
lay
in.
down. So you did have that issue with that particular hive. But then you can tell that really, really old comb when it's like thin, like about a quarter of an inch, where like the drawn part is gone and all that's left is like the foundation part. And that stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. You may as well just throw it away because you're not going to get anything out of it. And
Right.
and that is I saw that in that hive.
And you did see that then waxworms had carved into the wood and stuff in that also. You know how they leave those little
Yeah,
etching
I don't
into
remember.
the sides of the wood? Did you see any of that?
I don't remember. I still have the bars from that hive. I saw them today. So
Yeah.
and I don't remember seeing any wax moth dig outs in it. I just don't remember. I
Then
don't
what
remember.
made you think waxworms had been in it?
Um, because I saw something in there. I remember. I know that's one of the things I look for is because whenever people say these bees have been in for 10 years, the
Yeah.
first thing I think of, well, there's bees been here, but not these bees. And like Randy said, you're going to see evidence of that. Even in fact, when Randy and I did that removal in Mississippi together a few weeks back, that's the first thing when Randy pulled that insulation back, that's the first thing he saw was evidence of an old hive right there. And they
Oh
just
yeah,
built.
yeah. That had, yeah. But nobody
Mhm.
had cut out the old one. This was, you were the first ones in that wall.
Yeah.
So it at some point was just vacant from bees, right?
Yeah, that was that elevated house. So it was three big hives in the floor of an elevated house.
Well,
And I got the easiest one.
so
by far.
oh, you're talking about the one where you were both working on it?
Yeah, he got there early and picked out one, and of course
That's not true. That's not true.
Take the easy picking. All right. Well, well, there are more things I want to ask because this is what I want. Why I want to talk about this stuff is because people that don't want to do anything with their bees, they just want to set them up, put them in their yard, not touch them, and expect them to pollinate their vegetables and things like that. They want to just have bees out there, and they'll see a story like that where here's a Top-Bar hive that's been here untouched. Look how healthy the bees are. Look how great everything is. And if it had been built better, they would still be just fine, right? So we kind of don't want people to think that way, right? We don't want to just park some bees somewhere and leave them to themselves, or do we? Either one of you can answer that.
You're a good friend, Fred. So I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut.
No, I mean, there's no wrong answer.
No,
That's why we're here. I'm just saying that people, as soon as they hear that story, they use that story and
Yeah.
spread it everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And as an example, and so the other question I had too, Jeff, is were there any other hives that were also left unattended for that period of time, or was it just one hive there?
That was the only hive that was up there.
That's the only hive. Okay.
They had other hives there, but they were all gone already. No bees in them.
Okay. But no, Randy, I want you to disagree. If you've got a different opinion, I mean, seriously, that's why we're here.
Yeah, I know.
Also demonstrate, by the way, that people can talk about things and not even be in the same lane as far as practices go. That doesn't mean that you have to find a different bee club because
so down here you can run completely chemically treatment free or any other method treatment free. You don't have to go on brood breaks, anything like that anybody else is doing. You can run completely treatment free down here. And I know enough people that do kind of nationwide that I think there's other areas. I couldn't say you could do it everywhere.
Mhm.
I'm treatment free, but I've played with treatments before with my dad and my brother, both treated the entire time they've been beekeeping. And so I know all about the treatments, but their success rate with keeping bees is not any better than mine.
Mhm.
And so I just see what's possible treatment free. It's cheaper, it's less time consuming on me, and time's the biggest thing because I just don't have time to be tending a bunch of stuff or doing a bunch of extra tasks that I don't have to do.
Well, and the other thing that comes to mind too is both of you have access to an easy replenishment stock. If you're doing a bunch of cutouts and things like that, you can kind of cherry pick those. You see a colony that looks really good and it feels right to you. I'm sure, doesn't that find its way into your own apiary?
It does. We pick and choose our genetics based on trait. Just like if I was breeding dogs or chickens or anything else, I'm going to pick what I like and keep it. And so I do the same thing with bees.
I would say this, Fred, that I have because we have several out yards outside of the Abbey. I have the luxury, I would say, of picking and choosing where I put these cutouts that I do, and for the most part, I allow the bees at the Abbey. They're all dog bees, mongrel bees. I don't have any problem bringing in a cutout hive in there and introducing that genetics into the field. That's fine with me. But as far as my out yards go, I don't do that. I keep those because I have like the one that we work today. That yard has not had any other bees in it for 7 years. So that and we've grown. Well, we had 50 hives in that thing just 3 weeks ago, and now we're going through splitting them now. I sold a bunch of those bees because it's too many in that yard. But I really feel that, in a sense, when you get those number of bees, and in this area, it's an isolated. It's 500 acres, isolated. It's all wooded all around it, so you almost create their own eco environment in that thing where you have your own drones. It's almost genetic line in there.
Mhm.
And so now after 7 years, that's at least in my little way of thinking, I really have something that of value in
Mhm.
there. And it's taken that long for that yard to turn around because it stumbled and stumbled and stumbled, and then it started catching 3 years ago. And then last year it actually was my best producing yard, most honey, the most prolific bees.
Mhm.
And today we split in that yard today. We have 30, there's 30 hives in it now. And out of those 30, I split up, well, I put boards in 22 of them. That's how strong these hives are with the
Mhm.
number of bees and the genetics of gentleness. I mean, I wasn't even smoking them to once the cold wore off this morning. I was just working the bees. Yeah, I mean, I still got stung, but they're not aggressive, and they're very, very they've adapted to their environment. That's
Mhm.
what I would say. And I
Now,
leave them alone.
okay, so now are you selling nukes or anything?
Not anymore.
Are these all pest
I
free?
just sold bees to get my number because we were at 180, and I want to get down to about 140. So I sold 40 hives so that once I do my splits, then I'll be over 200, and that's really where I want to be, about 200.
So what's your insurance policy against losses? Like, in other words, do you keep some nukes around? Do you have like resource hives? What do you do?
Splits. Splits. That's it.
Splits. That's it. Randy,
Right.
how about you?
Same thing.
Same
Splits
thing.
or yep.
Splits. And are you keeping any of the bees that you're finding out there? Do you pick the ones that you like, or that what's your scoring card for how you look at a feral colony that you're whether or not you bring it home or just give it away to somebody else?
Go ahead, Randy.
Oh, I just look at how they're how they act when we're pulling them out, and how how strong the hive is, how much honey they've stored up, how big the combs are, how big the hive is.
Hmm.
If it's a big, strong colony and they're super gentle, I want them.
Okay.
So that's the same for me too. The first thing I go by is size. And you can tell the growth of a hive, how much it's grown in it. Short, you can pretty much guess about the time frame, 1, 2, 3 years. You can tell by the size. I look for the presence of hive beetles. I look for the brood, the amount of brood. I look, like Randy says, the honey, and then the temperament of the bees. And but the first thing that I always go by is size. I always go
Mm,
by size. And that's the first thing, because if it's size, then the numbers are going to be there, and the numbers correlate to genetics of that queen.
yeah.
Hmm.
So the last one that I got that I was proud of was it was a massive colony, and they've just completely unsuited. We did the whole removal with no suit, no smoke. I think I might have got stung a couple times just by grabbing bees while I was pulling combs out. But I took those home, set them up, and I ran them for a season and a half maybe, and just was I set them in a box that was actually on the ground. I had an old pallet from a commercial bee yard on the ground. These boxes were on the ground on top of that pallet, and grass was growing up around them. And I ran my weed eater around the outside of that box, and the weed eater actually slapped up in the entrance to the box a little bit, and the bees, a couple of them walked out and looked around like, "Oh, what was that?" And that was the only reaction that I got out of them for running a weed eater around them. And so when Darren up at Wonderful asked me if I had any genetics I could, their yard was getting hot, and they've been using Italian breeder queens and probably the same line year over year. And I said, shoot, man, I got a jam up queen for you. So they took her and made 13,000. He said they thought it was about 13,000 grafts off of her before somebody rolled her. And
Somebody rolled her.
yeah. So they had her on the shelf for a little while, sitting up on top of their grafting station.
So they let Jeff come in to help out? What? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, Randy still has a little bit of trouble identifying queens, but so it wasn't him.
Yeah.
You are good
It wasn't me.
at-
I thought it was a drum. I'm sorry.
Now, what about environment-wise? Do you have an area, Randy, where your bees are somewhat isolated so you can control your genetics a little bit, or are you mixed up with
No,
nearby keepers?
there's beekeepers within a mile and a half of me in every direction.
Okay. Is
So
that the closest, about a mile out?
yeah,
Oh, you guys
yeah,
are lucky. I've got one 1,000 yards, right?
yeah.
Now, Fred, I will say this, the reason why we have so many out yards, and we have 9 of them. And the reason for that is because in 2016, when the flood uh, hit the Abbey and it washed all of our bees away. So from that experience, I said, I will never, ever, ever again put all of our bees at the Abbey. So that's why we spread out all over. And we're about, it's almost a 40-mile radius from the Abbey. So we have 40 miles from the Abbey in any direction, we have bees.
Well, you missed a chance to start up a whole new Noah's Ark apiary. You could have had, it's too late now. Because now
Well, Fred,
fine.
you bring it up, so I'm going to ask you. Um, do you know where Noah kept the bees?
Oh, I know this is going to be a joke, but let
No,
me,
it's not.
okay,
Not
where did Noah keep the bees?
in the archives.
I knew it. Okay, okay, I got one for you. I got one for you.
Oh, okay.
So Noah ran them all out, at the end. They were on the ground and they're sending all the animals out. And he gets in the corner and there were a couple of remnants in there and there were a couple of snakes. And he was telling everything to get out, go forth and multiply. And he says, "Why aren't you going anywhere?" "We can't, Noah. We're adders." All right.
You told me that one. I already heard that one from
You
Did
you.
already
you
heard
did
it?
did you tell him the one about Bruce Lee?
Don't make him. He did that. He's just cycling his same jokes over and over. All right. Yes, I've heard the Bruce Lee.
So I was gonna say that all these beekeepers that I said they're around me, they're all running the same line as me because they're most of them are my customers.
Okay. See, now that's good. If you can influence,
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough because I did treatment free for 10 years
Hmm.
and everyone around me had my bees.
Hmm.
That was sweet. In fact, my inspection from the state inspector, he found one mite.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was working. But we got a commercial group that came in here. I like to put the blame on them because they don't talk to me. So it's easy to say they're the reason. But that's when, and also it just happened to coincide with when oxalic acid was finally approved. That was considered a very soft thing. If it's something you can find in carrots, I figured how bad can it be? And that was the year I got 100% through. So that's what kind of hybridized me into that. So now, some of my colonies don't get treatments and some do. And because I can see the benefit, but this is something that people really push me on. That's why I like to keep the conversation going because I don't want to tell someone to just not understand what's going on with your bees and quit everything that you're doing because the line that you're working with may not handle that.
Exactly.
Right.
So we actually need to, the stock is the long game.
You
Well,
And
know,
we've tried everything. We've done everything from way back in the day when Fat Bee Man was doing the mineral oil fogging. We did
are
that.
you
We
talking
did
about
the
Don the Fat Bee Man?
yeah, we did
Yeah.
that. We did the Randy Oliver paper towels. We've done foggers. We've done Mite Away quick strips. We've done
Yeah.
any
By the way,
treatment you
the
can think of.
foggers were never approved.
No.
That's just, if anybody's listening, don't run out and grab an insect fogger and put mineral oil. Jeff, what were you about to say?
I forgot what it was, Fred. Sorry. That's all right. I might remember later.
But I will say, I will add to that most people, probably 90% of the people that treat around here only treat because they're told to. They
Yeah.
don't know their numbers. They don't do washes to check.
Right.
And so I highly encourage people to know their numbers before they treat, or if they treat, know
Yeah,
your
I
numbers,
have that.
know why you're treating.
Yeah, within our own club, I have that. How many of you are counting mites? Almost, maybe 3% raises their hands. How
Yeah,
many of you are treating your bees? More than
everybody.
50% raises their hands. So, how do you know that what you're doing, first of all, was required, and number two, how effective it was? unless you're counting before and after, because they'll, again, you hear it in one place and they just treat prophylactically because it's, it's what you're supposed to do. And not only that, and here's a message that I'm trying to communicate that failed earlier, was that people can have different disciplines and philosophies about keeping bees. It doesn't mean you don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
We really need that conversation to stay open, and we need it not to be where somebody slams the door and storms out or crosses their arms and talks over their shoulder. You know that when I'm giving a presentation and somebody's in the back going like this and they're going like this, talking to somebody next to them, just ask me. I'm right here.
Yeah.
If what you practice and what you think is working doesn't hold up under challenges that are respectful, then you should readdress what you're doing. It's not, we shouldn't have, the pride gets in the way, and because I've told people this is how you do it, somebody comes along and says, no, we really don't need to do it that way anymore, then you shouldn't be locked in, right?
Jeff and I have both talked about this at length before, and he and I are both on the same page with, we don't really care. It's your bees. You treat them how you
Right.
want to treat them.
Yeah.
I'm not treating mine. It's just the way I do. But if you feel like you need to treat, go ahead. I'm not going to say anything bad about it. I mean, I might judge you under my breath, but I'm not going to talk bad.
I'll be nice to you and judge you later. But
yeah. But in the end, I don't really care. If it's working for you, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's right that the individual beekeeper, it's their choice. If they
Right.
think that they are doing the right thing for their bees, then follow what you think. But like you said, Fred, if you're going to treat, well, why wouldn't you do washes to see if you
there's an investment there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you're probably aware, Fred, I do washes on a lot of these cutouts that we do and a lot of the swarm catches that we do. And consistently across the board, it's 1 to 2 mites to maybe 3 per wash. Sometimes nothing in multiple washes on the same colony. So if they can do that on their own, I don't need to help them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to say this, Fred. We went through 30 hives today, and I'm scraping all the drone brood off the bridge comb. I saw 1 mite today. 1 out of 30 hives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like,
so your glasses don't work. What is the problem?
Well, I'm looking for them. I really am, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to look is when I'm looking at those drones. And it's not that hard to, pick around the drone to look. And I said, Charlie, look, there's a mite today. That was the first one and only one we saw.
Yeah. At a time when because you're brooding up, so you would expect the mite numbers to be picking up.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to talk just about mites all this time. We have other stuff to talk about. So this is another thing. I want to know your opinion on this. We have a guy that just lives a few miles from here, and his house is from like 1890. And he was upset because they're redoing the roof on his house. And the construction guys wouldn't work the roof so long as he has bees there. So his bees have been in his wall since his kids were little. So there's always been a resident colony in these walls, and he likes it there. He thinks it's great. He loves it because they come out, it's a 3-story, and they're coming out under the Victorian gabled ends and stuff. So what do you think about bees just staying in a house? Like, do they do long-term damage to the structure? So with, Randy's experience and your experience, Jeff, cutting out things, what kind of damage are they really causing by occupying a wall that otherwise really has little or no insulation?
Go ahead, Randy. I know we both have our opinions on that one.
I want to hear it. It's good stuff.
Aside from a dead out running down through the walls, they don't do any damage. The damage is done if there's a dead out and it's on drywall. Typically, that seeps into the drywall. Roaches chew through that, and then the bees eventually can come through the paper and get into the house if there's another, if it's rehabbed or whatever. But in an old structure that has nothing but wood, they're not going to do any damage. And as a matter of fact, I went and looked at a house this past year that it was built in the 20s or 30s. I don't know. It belonged to some gangster back in the day. So it's some historic value there, and it's an Airbnb. So you get to stay in this special, I don't know. Well, who's a famous gangster? Pretty Boy Floyd or something, whatever.
I don't
You
know.
get to stay in this famous gangster's house, but it's got bees in the wall. It had bees in 2 areas. And I went in and looked at the house and got with the lady, and I said, you really, your options here are expensive any way you look at it.
Mhm.
And she said, well, they've been here for 10 years. And I said, well, leave them. They're not hurting anybody. Their entrance is 20 something feet off the ground out back. They're not going to bother your yard man even. And I said, it's just something extra special about this house. And she's the president of the Sierra Club down here. And we talked for a little while, and she had me come speak at their club about bees. And she found it super interesting, but I don't see that they do the bees themselves don't do any damage structurally outside of chewing insulation out.
Right, and if these old places plaster lathe on the inside and there's no insulation, and I would think that would be actually the most insulated wall in that part of the house, is because the
It
bees
very,
are in it. And if anything
very
else,
likely is.
they're contributing warmth in winter, and it's sound
Yeah.
dampening.
They're
Yeah.
But you can't call them managed bees, because now you have to have access, they have to be inspected, you have to have removable comb, which is what I'm going to hit Jeff up about
But
later.
wait, I want to comment
I
on
know, I want to hear what you have to say. Go.
so that the other thing that the question is, do they cause damage? Absolutely no, they do not cause it. If anything, because of the fact that they propolize the entire interior of the space, they in essence seal it off. They seal it off so well, and Randy will testify this,
Yeah.
they will actually close in the termites that are in the wall. They'll close the termites so the termites can't go out. So in a way,
Good point.
Mhm.
Good
I
point.
know we've both seen it dozens of
Yeah.
times
Yeah.
where the propolis is actually the only thing holding the wood together at that point, because
Oh,
the
man,
termites are
there's
so.
that construction I was talking about that you only find in the South.
It's construction adhesive holding that house together.
That's right.
And the R value.
Yeah.
And the R value. So yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about it until this guy was so concerned, and I told him that just don't let him do any repairs on that molding, leave the entrance there, and your chances of getting reoccupied once these guys are done and out of there are pretty high. And they did. So he's got bees back. But it's the
Nice.
first time I ran into anyone who even made me think about that, is because he wanted them there. And, the way they enter and leave, they're in no one's walkway. They're not going to bother anybody. And very interesting way to think of it.
That is one of the things, like Randy, you suggest to the people, why take the bees out if their flight way is 10, 15 feet in the air? They're not going to be any problem. They're not going to hurt your house.
Right.
And
They're not
and
termites. They're
you're
not starving
actually
anything.
helping the plants and stuff in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
like
a
it.
Yeah.
That needs to be a campaign.
The only exception, again, like I say, is if they're in a ceiling, but if they're in between floors over
Right.
sheetrock, if they die out,
That's a
they're
problem.
going to cause some damage to sheetrock, but it's not structural, and it's going to be years before they get through.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Okay. So that's interesting. And oh yeah, so keeping our bees. Now I've had this talk with Jeff before. Bees that have a roof over them. What's that?
I
Bees
don't.
that have a roof over them, like a lean-to, or they're in some kind of partial shed or structure. Jeff thinks they're doing a lot better than those that are just out in the open. What do you think, Randy?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you have to give longer answers than that. We have to explain why that would be a good idea for the bees.
Okay. I thought that was a yes or no
No,
question.
we're sharing the why and how and everything for the people that are listening.
Okay. So part of one of my talks that I give a lot is that bees don't generally habit in structures where the sun is hitting on it. They're generally on the north side of structure, or they're under some kind of full shade, big oak trees, behind a chimney, some overhang or something. Even the entrance to the hive doesn't usually get full sun on it. It happens sometimes, but most of the time they're in a spot where there's not their temperature is completely soft, through the day and through the night. And so, yeah, I like shade. I don't like I have some hives out in the full sun, but I like them in the shade if I can get them in a shady spot.
Well, and let's add to that, where you're located, what does full sun mean? I mean, if you're in late July and early August, what kind of temperatures are we talking about?
As soon as the temperatures get to where an attic space can get 110, 120, something like that,
Right.
You'll see, and I've got pictures of it. You'll see where the sun starts is where the hive stops. So if
Yep.
they're growing out of soffit space and the sun is coming across the roof to here, that's where that hive stops. They don't go any further than that.
Yeah.
And same thing on walls. And you would think they could build behind brick veneer or something like that, but on a south facing wall, you'd be amazed at how hot brick veneer gets during the day.
Oh, yeah.
And then it holds that heat for a long time. It's like a potato.
Yep.
And so
Same reason when you run out after sunset and the pavement's still hot when you're a little kid and you sit on it.
yeah.
Well, I don't know if you guys did that. You may not have had pavement where you live. I don't know, Jeff.
We had dirt roads.
I don't know.
Well,
It's a-
Fred, you know what I did today? I took my long hive that used to be on the back porch here at the house, and I brought it up to the Abbey. And today, Charlie and I moved the long hive inside of the peacock pen today. So and I told this to Randy just a little bit earlier. Today I caught my first swarm in one of my traps, and so that swarm will be moved into our long hive, which is now inside of the peacock pen.
Now,
And
what's your long hive, long Langstroth?
it's a long Langstroth, correct?
Is that also where you have that oversized observation hive?
It's right. It's in the same peacock building, but in the next bin over.
I don't think it was a swarm. I think it was an abscond that observation.
I knew that Randy. So this is a competition you guys are having. Is that the first one for the year? Is that
Yeah,
why?
that's it. That's it. I'm number one.
That was it.
So does he call you up, Randy, and show you pictures just to
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, he always beats me to the first one of the year because they're a week ahead of us every year. So he usually beats me to it. But that's part of our criteria. If you're going to catch a swarm, you have to be in the picture. So
With
I
your
know that
head in the
because
swarm.
because a lot of people share their pictures with us, and I don't want him sending me pictures of all his members of his bee club's swarms they caught.
Yeah,
Hey, Randy,
stolen valor. We don't want that.
I didn't send the picture to you, but it will be this Friday's video. It'll be at the end of this Friday's video.
Okay.
Oh
I
yeah.
believe you.
While we're talking about that, did you make a video of today's work there, Jeff?
I sure did. I sure did.
And when does that come out?
It'll be posted this Friday.
This
So
Friday.
it's on the use of double screen dividing boards doing splits.
Now, do you have to be a member to see it Friday?
Oh, no, I know everybody.
Or people have to wait.
Fred, and I'll say this too, Fred, that I actually mentioned you at the very beginning of the video. Not only do I mention you, but I mentioned this very Zoom presentation.
Okay.
How we are doing it this evening, and you will be posting it sometime this week.
Okay. And for people that are watching and listening, if it's on the podcast or if it's on YouTube, look at the links down in the video description. You can go to both of their YouTube channels and see what happens for people that really work for a living. That don't just sit at a table like I do and cycle information around.
But you do that so well, Fred.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sit around and do nothing? What are you saying?
Cycle info.
Well, you offer so much more valuable information than we do. We're a yuck fest. We're just, you know.
Let me tell you.
Everybody wants to be serious. They come here and listen to some real talk.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, because what you're doing, we've talked about this before, but so much information can be gathered. I mean, and you can't pretend I didn't have some influence on Jeff because he's paying attention to stuff now that he didn't used to care about.
I particularly I make notes of things, Fred, that you like the entrance, the size of entrance, the location of like Randy, north, south, that kind of stuff. And I say that I observe it, but I don't talk about it because it just I use it I use it as a reference for myself.
Sure.
And you made me start talking about it.
Well, because
Yeah.
the thing is, look at all the rip outs you've done. Look at all the bees you've seen. This is old hat to you guys. So the things that are so everyday for you are not for the person that's watching this for the first time. So taking a minute to explain what we're looking at and why, and you did a very good, both of you did a very good job of that. When you took apart that Top-Bar Hive, you explained frame by frame what we're looking at. Randy did it when they're cutting out the new comb that was full of honey. They were all cutting that out piece by piece. And by the way, Randy, that was some good editing where you cut in there and they cut away to all the sines, cosines, tangents, and you got the blackboard and you cut that music in there. And he was like figuring out all the angles. That was perfect.
That
The
was
tracing was
awesome.
great. Everything was good. So it's fun to do that, but also to give people real explanations about what we're looking at and why it's like that. I
You
mean,
know,
I think
Fred,
that's
there is a tremendous difference between working bees in a box and working bees in a house. It
right.
is
Yeah.
worlds apart. There's so much similarity, but you're not restricted to that 16 by 20 by 9. And it's so it's different. It really is. So it's, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to observe bee behavior in a removal than it is in a restricted bee box. Because you can actually see, and Randy will testify this, you can actually see the movement of bees, how bees move in a cutout. In a hive, they just run to the sides and run up and down. You don't that's what you see. But in a removal, you can actually see how the bees move for one comb, move to the side. It's amazing how bees actually work differently than in a hive. And it's that what I have learned over there, that's how I control the way I want these bees to go. And Randy does the exact same thing. We want the bees to go a certain way, so we do things to get them to go how we want to do them.
hmm hmm Now,
And
this is interesting. Randy mentioned that he had a call from someone that was having a problem locating uh, the swarm in or the colony inside the wall, and they were just kind of cutting everything off the walls to locate it. And it was good on you that you didn't mention the name of the person out of respect for his integrity and his personal well-being.
I found the
Um,
picture. Should I show it here?
one of the things that occurs to me is instead of cutting away these big panels and everything, does no one just cut a 1/4 inch hole and put an endoscope in there and see if the bees are occupying where you
that
think they are?
that's the step that people seem to skip the most, is just drill a probe hole.
Yeah,
It's the size of a pencil. You get an endoscope or a fiberglass rod or a
yeah,
coat hanger, anything you want. Go up in there and see if you hit comb.
yep. Because I have that, it's 200 thousandths, so the diameter of it is less than 1/4 inch, and it
Yeah,
has two, so you can shift 90 degrees once you're in and look up and scan all over.
yeah.
So I'm just curious why that doesn't happen more before people. I think Jeff had a story years ago of chasing what he thought. I think he found some hot water pipes or something, and he
That
was
was terrible.
he just
Oh
took the
man.
whole house apart and then gave up and went home or something.
Yeah. And I left
I,
and I left a lot of comb in the wall, and the maggots came out. Hey,
I
hey,
I think
Fred,
we've all done it. I think we've all done it.
Oh, that's a good question. Have you gotten started and just really wanted to go? Just once you realized how much work it was going to be, did you really want to just kind of high five somebody else and let them take it and leave?
not Randy. Randy likes them hard ones, not me. I don't
He's
like.
I,
writing.
I walked off a job one time.
Did
Yeah.
you tell us about that?
I,
What was
I
going
was
on? And
I was given a lot of bad information by the homeowner who was being slick, and so we priced the jobs before we go out, and this was a good distance from me. It's an hour and a half from me. New construction, but it had been going on for a while. It's one of these builds. It was a huge build, but they'd been working on it for a good long while, and so it had a fairly defensive colony in it that had been there for at least a year or two. But he called me to remove a swarm, and he said they've only been in there a couple of weeks. We're up there every day. I know how long they've been there, and we're working in this area, And so I give them a price. We get up there and I find out what it is and how bad they are. And it's the only one I've ever walked off of. It just made me mad. I left and he called me back and said, "Are you coming back?" I said, "No, I'm not coming back." So I said, "For triple the price." And so after a little back and forth, he said, "Okay." And so I went back up and me and Pete did the removal, and it was a
See,
big hive.
that backfires. You tell somebody you don't want to do something, so you raise the price, and with that higher price comes higher expectation. And so
Now, hey, Randy, and because you, I know, have experienced it yourself, the ones that aggravate me the most is when you go out there, because based on what they've told you, and you go out there and you open up and you have dead bees because they sprayed.
sure.
For
Yep.
some reason, they failed to tell you, oh yeah, we sprayed.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure that's part of your job check is to ask them if any exterminators have been out there and tried to do something with them, right?
Yeah.
We do. I do now. Have you sprayed these bees?
Yeah. So, and
No, we wouldn't do that. We would never do
Right.
anything like that.
well, and that's why Randy's justified. When you realize the person that hired you lied to you, that's your ticket out right there because
Yeah.
that's justification. On the
Yeah.
flip side of that, you guys often meet people when you do a cutout where you leave them with an unbelievable impression about what bees are, what the honey is that they're making, and they're just completely surprised by it. I want to hear a story from each of you about someone that you just changed their world when they learned what bees were like and what they were doing in that cavity. You can go first, Jeff.
I've got a one that we did just a couple of weeks ago, and it's actually uh, the story actually takes almost a year that happens because this was a house about 3 miles from the Abbey that it was one of those swarm magnet houses. The bees are go. I pulled um, probably 4 hives out of this house. It's a cedar sided house, and they just love that stuff. There's so many ways to get in it. And the owner of that house sold it right after I removed 2 of the colonies, the last 2 colonies in there. He sold the house. So the new people that came in, I talked to those new people. I said, look, I pulled bees out of this house 4 times already. There's no way you can make it bee proof. It's just too old of a house, too much work would be necessary. When the bees come, and they will come, call me and I'll come right away and we can get rid of them at that point. It's going to cost you way less. So 2 years went by, no bees didn't get. Then last year, the swarm moved in, and she called me, and I went over and I said, "Look, they just moved in." I said, "I can take care of these bees. $60. I'll remove them right now." And she said, "Okay, well, I'll call you back." Well, didn't call me back until uh, about 3 weeks ago. She called me, goes, "I can't take it no more. You got to come get these bees." So I went over there and I removed the colony, and when I removed the boards and I exposed the comb, I said, "Come here, come see." And I said, "Here's the bees." And she goes, "Oh my God." She says, "Oh," and she leaves.
What?
And she says, I'm never gonna do that again. As soon as they see him, I'm calling you." So and then I showed her all the comb that we pulled out of it, and the bee and the queen and all that stuff. So it made a very good impression on the woman. She will call me. I guarantee she will call me when the bees come during this swarm season.
And that's your most memorable home?
Oh, well, that's the one that just happened recently, so I remember that one.
All right. Okay, Randy.
So I've got one that I tell quite often. Mr. Tom down on the beach has a house built in 1899. It's a big old huge house, and he's a contractor. And he contacted me to take some bees off the second floor behind the chimney. There's a chimney, and then there's a window almost immediately starts on one side of it, and the bees are on this side, on the window side. They're coming in between the window and the chimney, and so I get up there and look at it, and FLIR read it. There's a heat signature from floor to ceiling in a 9-foot ceiling room. And we discussed it, how I've got to get into it. We can't go through the outside. They're trying to figure out every way I can do to not cut up this 100-and-something-year-old house. Can you get it through the attic? Can you get it any other? Nope, the wall's got to come open. So he gives me the green light, and I start cutting, and I realize this gypsum board on top of beautiful shiplap tongue and groove 1x6 with a light green paint. It's real pretty. So I had just cut a entrance opening just to see where the bees were, or see how far down the hive came, and had peeled off some of the gypsum board. And his wife comes upstairs in the middle of this and sees what's behind that sheetrock and just absolutely loses her mind. She's ready to kill him and me both for cutting a hole in that wall that she didn't realize was back there. Now she's picturing this whole room stripping the sheetrock off of it, and she's back down to this beautiful finish, which is it's already in the middle bedroom. And so heated discussion, and I had dulled some blades cutting in. It was some of those old hand forged nails, and so I said, I've got to run to Lowe's and get some blades. If my tools are on the porch when I get back, I'll know what's up. So I left and give them time to discuss it. And I come back, and they had talked it out and said, let's go ahead with it. So we cut the wall open, and it's absolutely packed. It's 24-inch centers on the wall stud. So it's a huge wide hive, and it's also almost the full height of the wall. Plus it's old balloon framing. So there's no top plate, and it goes up into the attic, which was spray foam insulated, but had the bees had chewed their way up into that and built another few feet up into the attic. And so I worked on this hive for better part of 6 or 7 hours, probably, in their house. But when we first got into it, they wanted to taste the honey. So I had the wife and the kids up there tasting honey, and oh, this is great stuff. And can we have it? Yeah, absolutely. You can have it. Let me show you how to process this. So we get downstairs in the kitchen and set up a little station, and I've got them crushing and straining honey, and I'm cutting it. The kids are bringing it down and back up. And these kids are teenagers, they're older, but so they had the neighbors over helping, so the neighbors could get some honey. And by the time we get close to the ceiling, they send the kids back up to say, we're done. That's it. Everybody's forearms are burning. We've got all the honey we want. We don't want any more. I'm like, you can't quit now. We got another foot to go. So cut all the way to the ceiling and up in as far as I could get. And I actually had to come back the next day with Pete to get what was in the attic, because I wouldn't fit over there where it was. And Pete had to crawl over there and get the rest of it. But they ended up with, I can't remember exactly, but it was 6 or 7 gallons of honey, and I got a giant hive out of it and a good queen. But they contacted me the following year and bought some nukes, and now they're beekeepers. They've been beekeepers for about 3 years now, I guess.
That story is way better than mine.
Whatever. Well, it is good. And when you get to give people their first taste of comb honey and see what the response is, some people never seen it, let alone tasted it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was that? You had a thumbnail on one of your videos, Randy, that said, and you say, what about honey or something like that? There was something about honey. What's that story? What was the thing about the honey?
That was, she had heard that raw honey had an effect in the love life of a man.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I thought it was something to do about like sugar diabetes or something.
No, it made the man more effective, if you know what I mean.
Okay, well, that did not. I've heard about them, the Revolutionary War heroes. They were called the Minutemen. But then there was.
Hey, Fred, could I interrupt right here? Because I really, you're talking about that thumbnail, and earlier we were talking about a picture. I got a picture here. I'm going to have to show it up there. That I don't know if many people had seen this, but let me see if can y'all.
Oh no, there it is.
Yeah.
What did they actually call that thing? What was the name of it? Now, just for those who can't see it and are only listening, Jeff just held up a thing that looks like Mount Rushmore, but it's four of the most famous beekeepers to ever walk the Northern Hemisphere. And the issue is Randy's missing from it. That's why Jeff likes to bring it up. Yeah, Bob Binney came
Actually, Fred, the really reason I like bringing that up is because my image is next to you. That's why, that's why I really am thrilled about it.
Yeah, whatever. It's pretty funny. Yeah, Bob Binney. In fact, Bob Binney's wife is the one that took that picture and sent it to me, and that I sent it to you. So
Yeah, 'cause I didn't even see it, and Randy didn't even see it.
No, I don't even.
it's a big piece. Like I said,
I
I
can't
don't.
believe
interesting.
I don't know
we
how I
did not
missed it.
see it.
Yep. Yep.
That's how much fun we were having. That was just
It was over by the Hives for Heroes booth, although it wasn't theirs. It was right. It was adjacent to them.
Well, they were pretty close to us, and I never saw it.
Now I have a question. All right, let's talk because I'm gonna fool around with top bars this year, and I'm hearing all these stories about them. Someone said that small hive beetles don't make it in a top bar hive because there's nowhere to hide. What are your thoughts on that?
baloney.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Ed says baloney based on what?
Oh, because I've had top bar hives. That had beetles in them.
You have small hive beetles in them?
Oh yeah, I had
Where do you find them? Where do they show up the most when you're getting into your
they're
top?
always there. The majority of them will always be in the rear of the hive.
Okay.
That's where you're going to find. You'll see them scattered, in the hive. But when you get to the end, that last 2 or 3 frames in the back, I mean, I can remember seeing literally hundreds of them back there.
And that's
And
because the bees haven't started working that part of the hive yet. Right.
exactly. And
Yeah.
then what also happens is that because the bees push them that way, then they get behind the following board and go into the cavity that the open space. That's not true. My personal experience with the top bar, I I would definitely prefer a horizontal Langstroth.
Long Langstroth.
Yes, most definitely. The problem also with top bar with our heat, those comb get so heavy, they collapse. They warm up and boom, they fall. I had even tried to stabilize and put sidebars on it, and
Okay.
even with that, they still fell. The
But then I
only
guess, would you go as far as to say if somebody were insistent that you use a top bar hive, you'd want to put that where it's got some shade and you're not going to see it hit those.
mine was in the shade, and it's
But
still.
then shaded hives, do they get more small hive beetles than those that are in the sun? Any
I don't.
difference? Any
No, I
difference?
don't think so. I
No?
don't think so.
I don't
Randy,
think
do you
so.
agree with everything Jeff just said?
Yeah, I do.
Have you
I will.
got top bar hives too?
Yeah, a little bit. I will say, and my dad's got 2. He's got the ones that Ricky Rourke built.
Okay.
Uh,
I didn't know
horizontal.
Ricky did top bar hives. He
Yeah,
does?
well, where they're long Langstroth.
Long
horizontal.
legs. Okay.
Horizontalbees.com. But I have worked with. I have had a top bar and helped a couple other people populate top bars. And so the way I got around the comb collapsing was I just cut. They were all built similar dimensions to a Langstroth, and so I left the foundation in and cut the foundation at a V. So they're foundation top bars.
Yeah,
Oh, the
that would
foundation.
help stabilize the comb.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first one I ever did like that was a guy that bought a nuke from me, which they're 5-frame Langstroth nukes, and he wanted me to populate his top bar with this nuke. And I said, well, I don't really know how I'm gonna populate this thing because it's on a Langstroth frame and all the brood's on the frame. And he says, well, that's only how I've got. And so I said, well, I can cut it up, but you're going to lose a little bit of comb and a little bit of brood. He said, that's fine. So I took some, I think I took a trim saw, one of those little Japanese trim saws, and cut the sidebars to where they would fit. And then I took some sheet metal shears and cut the foundation to the contour of the box. And that's how I populated his box. And I kept it on my yard for a week and a half until it looked like it was established and going to survive.
But you'd say you're not a fan of that overall.
Of
You'd
top bars,
You
nah.
prefer the long Langstroth, you're saying, Jeff?
I prefer long Langstroth or long layins.
Long lay-ins.
Yeah.
Even those big frames, man. I thought my lay-ins hive was dead. I was ready to clean them out, and I mean, I was really sad about it. I didn't want to move them out of there with their incompatible frames with all my other hives and everything. Then Annette runs out there this afternoon and goes, "Boy, are those happy bees in that lay-ins hive?" And I just thought, oh, that was it.
So, my lay-ins, it succumbed during the a couple of months ago, and I cleaned it. I did a video on it, and so I'll repopulate that box again. And I with that one, I actually put bars in there to help stabilize the comb. But even then, I still had trouble. I like what Randy says using, and I'm going to modify my frames just like that. I'm going to put plastic foundation inside of the comb because it just gets too hot. It just that comb just will collapse.
Now,
And
if you do that, are you going to punch holes in that foundation so they can migrate through the middle of it, or are you going to leave it go
no,
around the edges?
yeah, there's a 3/8 inch gap on each side. They can get around that. They
Jeff
don't.
doesn't like to give his bees any help. They can walk around.
Okay, so given that you're in a damp, high humidity area, what is your favorite finish for your hives for the outside?
Go ahead, Randy, you go.
Any kind of cheap outdoor paint.
Glass
paint.
latex? What is it?
Oops paint. Any kind of oops paint.
Any kind of oops paint. So that's paint that people turn back into the store? Okay.
I
Latex?
I love wax dip boxes. I swear by those things for now. I don't want to paint ever again.
So where do you get your hives wax dipped?
Well, one of the guys I know he's going to be doing it, but he's going to do that 100% microcrystalline stuff instead of no paraffin. It's just 100%. It's what Greg Burns had done, and then on top of that, now Greg does that capo stuff.
Right,
Copper
he's got
naphthenate.
his Endura hives, so we
Yeah,
can give a
Endura
shout
hive,
out to
yeah,
him. And he's got some kind of copper mix on that new finish.
Is he
it
using
used
copper
100%.
naphthenate?
Sounds right. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know either.
Why
But
is
it's
that something good to use, Randy?
Yeah, that's been used for a long time. That I've heard people use mix of copper naphthenate and diesel and
Diesel.
yeah.
Are we
Other
talking
mixtures.
fence post, ground contact lumber? Is that what that sounds what that's
You're
for?
talking
Now, I
about
don't
some
think
stuff.
that's necessarily insect
So
friendly.
so it is if you leave them out to off gas for months, but if you're going to have equipment that's going to last you 20 years, if you have to leave it sitting out for 4, 5, 6 months, who cares? You know,
Well, I just
if it's
want
going
it
to last
on
you forever.
record that I am not suggesting that people dip their hives in diesel fuel. If it goes bad, that came from
smoker.
Randy McCaffrey. So
Put it in a smoker, Fred.
Yeah.
your hive just became a smoker. All right. Did you guys get did you get any of those Endura hives? Do you have any?
No.
He didn't give you like with your name on
Oh
it?
yeah,
Have
yeah,
one
Yeah,
out there?
yeah,
So you've
yeah.
got those, right?
I have that one.
A single deep. Yeah.
Did you get your one from Premiere that was at the expo?
Yeah.
Did you get one?
2 years ago was at Expo, but last year was at Greg did them at his booth.
He did them at his booth, but Premiere had boxes that were
Correct.
unfinished, and they collected them all, so we didn't get them at the end. And they said they were going to get them finished, and they were going to send them to us. So did you get yours,
Oh, I didn't get mine yet.
Randy? Did you get yours?
I didn't.
I didn't get mine either. I just want
No.
to put the word
After
out.
this video gets posted, Fred, and they hear that, they'll probably special order it to us.
You are seeing through my ulterior
Sorry,
motives. Okay, so now
No,
I see.
I did not receive my onesie.
So now, when you're hunting queens at the end of a cutout, Jeff, you always have that clip, the hair clip style.
Uh-huh.
Is that your favorite queen clip?
Well, I just use that to put it in because for me, it's so much easier just to drop her into that thing. I know there's a lot of beekeepers. I don't know if Randy, I don't know. I know Shawi likes to use those, and you use them too, Randy, where you actually just feed the queen
The
into that.
the JZBZ cage.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
those. And I
Oh, those
just
little the JZBs, those are the 3D printed ones.
No, those are the
Oh,
commercial guys use them.
yeah,
what's this
yeah,
one? What's this? You don't use this?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. That's it.
That's called a JZBZ.
Yeah.
All right. So that's your favorite then, Randy?
That's just what I have. I've usually got 20 of them in the door of the truck, and so they're smaller and easier to keep up with, and they're cheaper if I drop them than a queen clip, and they fit in your pocket. And those queen clips,
I've put them in
just
a queen clip before and had them walk right out of it.
I have two, and they don't fit in your pocket well.
yeah.
And
You have to put a rubber band around that
yeah,
clip because it
Well,
will.
I was watching this cutout master named Mr. Ed, and he didn't show the rubber band part. Just clipped it, got it down, and let all the other bees clamber all over it. So now this is where you thought that was common knowledge. We need to tell people.
No, I do say it. I always, in fact, even on that last video with Randy, I said, Charlie, you're going to put a rubber band on that for us.
Very good advice.
he
Very
did
good.
let me hold her though.
Can I hold her?
Oh, so I want to know, Jeff, on your observation hive, how's it going?
Oh, it's not looking good. They're just dropping. They're just not doing anything. I've got the sugar water on them. They're eating it, and the bees are still they haven't given up the ghost. But when I get my first swarm, it's going in there. They'll work it out.
Yep.
But I'm putting that first swarm in there because the first swarm is going to be a big one. I mean, the first one that I catch in a bucket.
So you say.
Yeah, right. I'll show you the picture. And
Yeah.
Fred,
The picture has to have you in it and
yeah,
today's
your face
paper
has to be in.
and today's
Today's
newspaper.
and the newspaper. Yeah, there you
But the
go. A
last
copy of your
year,
driver's license.
and birth certificate and Social Security. The last year they came out with this guy. Actually, it was 2 years ago. I saw the first time video of it, but it's a guy using a waste paper basket that he gets off of Amazon, a metal one that is it's metal, but it's perforated. Well, it's woven really metal in there, and for whatever reason, and I don't understand it, but when you take a swarm that's hanging in a tree and you get a plastic bucket and you bounce those bees into that plastic bucket, the first thing those bees do once they hit the bottom is they start pouring out of it. They just run out of it. Well, with this basket, when you get the bees in it, they don't only just stay in it, but the other bees go in it. It's amazing. And
Because of
so
all the
I
holes
did.
in it? Because of all
What's
the
that?
because of all the holes in the basket? Because
Yeah,
it's perforated?
It has
I
to
think
be.
I think so.
It has to be. But it's the Joey Rouse made a video of it. World famous Mike video. Barry did it a video. I did a video on it. I mean, it's like unbelievable how this basket once you shake those bees into it the first time, you just keep that bucket up there. The rest of them are going to get into it. And I've never seen that before 2 years ago. And so now with that little tool of mine, I'm just gonna whoop up on Randy on some swarms.
Now, this basket, who was the first one that you know of that used it, if we could credit them?
It was a guy on YouTube, and I can't remember his name, Fred. But I saw that video like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and I saw him catching that swarm with that. And when I first saw it, I said, I'm gonna have to get me one of them things.
So what's
And
the name of the basket? What's it called?
it's just a basket you get off of Amazon. It's a waste paper basket. It's like
A
15.
perforated waste paper basket.
It's
It's the
metal.
same.
It's metal.
It's the same one on that last video that I just put out where me and him did the cutout together, and I unboxed that BVAC. He used
Yeah.
that same. He used that same one as part of that BVAC.
You shoot me a link to that because somebody's going to say, I want to know where to get one of those baskets.
Oh man, I'm telling you,
Just
Fred,
send me the link.
I'll find it. And
Okay.
I can look up my Amazon past orders and I'll find it and
All
I'll
right.
send it.
That's a good way. So Randy, you agree that they do everything as Jeff described it?
Yeah, from what I've seen.
Okay.
I
I,
haven't experimented with it myself, so I don't know if he was doing some hoodoo on them, but
You know, I put mine on an extension pole. Randy is the extension pole. He just stands over his tiptoes and there you go.
okay, so while you're doing cutouts, I need to know if there was a time when you uncovered an animal you did not expect and it was a problem. Do you have any stories like that? Did you
yeah,
find a snake or something, scorpions or something that made
yeah.
you back out for a minute and have to regroup?
Well, snake hides or snake sheds rather are not uncommon to find in spaces. So I was up under a church shed. They had a portable building on the back of the church that they used for their clothing giveaways and things like that. Hive moves under it. I'm barely fitting under this thing, and I remove plywood off the bottom of it. And when I dropped that plywood down, a big snake shed fell out on my leg. And I don't know if there's a snake in there or not, but Pete says something about it, and I nearly tore the building down getting out from under it. But so there's that, and then also Pete is hilarious because he is terrified of any rodent, and so it's fairly common to find propolized squirrel carcasses or rat carcasses in feral colonies. And anytime we pull something like that down, he just goes into vibration mode.
Really?
Yeah, he's out. He's gone.
I like when I find the rat or the squirrel in there, I always say, "Look, Pete, this is for you."
Yeah, he did.
Fred,
Pete, the last
go ahead.
time Jeff did that, I told Pete, I said, you have to watch to the very end of the video because that's where he put it. And he calls him back. He says, I didn't appreciate that at all.
Yeah.
I had one experience that it still put shivers up my bones. And it for Randy, it's no big deal for him, but for me, it is. I was doing a swarm removal underneath the trailer, and you have to understand, like Randy was saying, when you're working in those confined spaces, there is absolutely zero space to get away. You're basically trapped in there. You can't you're stuck. That's all there is to it. Other than as fast as you can back out, that's what you limit to. So I'm underneath this trailer, and just like Randy does such a great job about removing that insulation. He puts his hand up there and he real slow. He's real methodical about moving it, and gets that exposure. I never remember to be real slow. I just kind of reach up there and pull back. And I did that on this one. And when I reached up there and pulled the insulation back, a hive of bumblebees fell right on my chest. And I didn't have a suit on or anything because it's a swarm. When it's a swarm, I don't gear up like I usually would. And that thing landed right on my chest and I'm underneath the trailer and I'm just like freaking out. And it's not like one or two bumblebees. I'm talking about 15, 20, 30. It's a bunch of them. They're right on my chest. And I don't I just got out of there real fast. But for some reason they weren't aggressive. I guess it must have been cool or something. But I didn't get stung or anything. But then things landed right there. The bad one. And Randy's got a good story about the bumblebees with the guy with the when his mother and him with the flip flop.
Yes, that's a good one.
Well, now that you mentioned it, you have to tell it.
Yeah, you gotta say it,
You were there in
Randy.
uh,
your flip-flops and they just got targeted by the bees?
yeah, I just finished up a cutout, and this guy calls me about some bees, and he was kind of in the area that I was in, and I said, well, I'll stop by and take a look, but it's late in the evening. I can't really do anything with them today. He thought it was honeybees, and I thought that's what he was calling about. But the thing that threw it off was he said they were in a birdhouse on his back porch, and I was like, I don't think they're honey. He said, yeah, they're honeybees. And so I said, well, I'll come by and look. So I go by and look, and his mom likes to sit out there and read, and she's up there in age and not in great health, and he's probably my age, lives with her, and so I go around there just to look at it and see what it is, and it's bumblebees. And just looking at it, I got stung twice. And I was like, holy smokes. I say, and I had an extra BVAC catch bucket with me. And I said, well, I'll take these things now. And so he says, well, I'll video for you if you want. I said, all right, that's great. So I had some pet screens, some real thick window
Jeff
screen.
should not be laughing at this. I'm just gonna, Jeff should not celebrate the demise of someone else that was an innocent bystander. Okay, go ahead, Randy.
So this was I think this was my first dealing with bumblebees, and I didn't realize how defensive they are. So I had some real thick pet screen, and I thought, well, I'll just wrap it around this hive and just bunch it up at the top like a pillowcase and carry this birdhouse around to the truck. And so I went around there and vacuumed up a few bees, and they weren't really coming out like that. So I get this. I think I did some vacuum work. I'm pretty sure I did. Anyway, get this pet screen, no gloves. I've got a bee jacket on, but no gloves. And this guy's has said, I'll video for you if you want me to. I said, oh, that'd be great. So he's standing like 20 feet, 15 feet away from me. His mom's right there with him. We're in the backyard on the back porch. And I wrapped this pet screen up around this birdhouse. And as soon as I tried to clamp it down, this pet screen's so thick that it's not really clamping down real easy. And they start boiling out the top of it. And because I don't have gloves on, they're just ripping my hands apart. And so I can't let it go, because I said, y'all get away or something. I told them to move. I'm taking this thing down and carrying it to the backyard because they're destroying my hands. But I'm like, if I drop this thing, this old lady's gonna die. And so I get the hive to the backyard, to the back fence, and I set it down and go back around front. And I'm checking on them, checking on my camera, and I'm like, I hope you get that on video. And he did. He had his recording the whole time, and all you see is him pointing at the ground. You see his flip flops, plop, 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 go around the house. And then you hear him and his mom around there arguing about, did you shut the gate? Like the gate's gonna, like the gate's gonna stop them. But I kept those bees. I took it home and set it up in my shed, and they stayed with me for the season.
Man, and what a lot of people don't know is a bumblebee can sting you over and over. It's not like a honeybee
Yeah.
where they lose their stinger, and they seem to carry quite a bit around with them.
There's an interesting fact about bumblebees, Fred. I'm sure you are aware of it, but the male bumblebee is the one that stings in this case, and the female doesn't sting. And you can distinguish the female bumblebee because she's got a little dot right on her forehead. So if you start paying attention to them, if you see the bee with the dot, the bumblebee with the dot, that's a female, and she does not sting. When I was a mailman back in my mail,
back in based on what?
I'm telling you. So we had a big wisteria bush out in the front, and at Easter time, the bumblebees would just go crazy over this wisteria bush. We would catch the bumblebees with the dots in your hand. You just catch them in your hand, and then you let them walk out your thumb. And when they walk out, you take a piece of thread and you put it around their head, and then you can fly them on the string.
Okay.
I got a video. I actually have a video of that. I took a bee to the post office and I flew it around the post office.
Okay, but before this gets quoted elsewhere, I want it understood. Let's take carpenter bees, for example. That yellow square on the head is the male. It's the drone. The females have the stingers because that's an ovipositor. That's where it came from initially. So, and they're in the they're bombus, which is the bumblebee group.
Yeah.
The yellow marker on the head is the male.
Well, how come when I catch them, and so you're saying the male doesn't sting?
The male does not sting.
Oh, you see, I always said it was Well, I was
And that's
wrong.
why I was really sorry that I had to point that out in front of at least
Oh,
five
that's okay. That's okay.
Well, like you said,
I'm glad.
like
people
you said, we
think
can
that the
disagree
yellow
and still be
marking is
friends.
the female. What?
Like you said, we can disagree and still be friends.
Yeah, we're still friends. We're still
I'm
friends.
glad you cleared that up for me, Professor, because
I just couldn't let it
all
go.
these years I thought it was the female bee was stingless, bumblebee.
Yeah. No.
Same thing with Southern Yellow Jackets. The male is no stinger,
Oh
and the
man, see,
female,
that's where knowledge is power. That's why I like to go up to, I'll even do it with European hornets. I'll
yeah,
just reach up and grab one of them. And it's if it's the male, because you can tell by their antennae, the way they're arced way out, then
yeah,
I'll just pick them up. Same thing with yellow jackets. You pick up the males, just reach right into the group and pick them up. People freak out because their tail comes right up, like they're
yeah,
pretending to sting you. And I also like to go up to the carpenter. The carpenter bees, the male guards, he gets right in your face. He's got that nice yellow marking on his head that you
yeah.
described, and you can slap him right out of the air and catch them and do all kinds of things. Or early in the morning when they're cold and they're on the side of a building, just go pick them up. And it freaks people out. But then it's a teaching tool because it's memorable because it can't sting. But that at the very fundamental end of it, that stinger has to do, its origins are in reproduction. So it is the female. That's
Thank you
why.
for
So I just,
clearing that up for me, Professor.
yeah, we can't have anybody quoting us incorrectly. So
No, I don't want, no, I don't want any bad information going out,
no, no
especially
bad
on your
information.
channel.
I forgot what else did I have to ask. Was that glass on that hive or plexiglass on that top bar that had the window on the side of it? Was that glass or plexi?
I think it was plexiglass because I don't it didn't shatter for
No,
that
it
top
could have
bar
been
hive.
plate glass or something. Yeah, because it was sure clear looking still
I
after.
just don't I don't remember, Fred. I don't remember. Well, I gave that hive to Randy because I put it at his house at Christmas because we did that removal right at
He
Christmas, and
dropped off that top bar hive at your house?
that is excellent equipment for Randy.
Well, you said that in the
I
video. You
did.
said,
I
Randy,
said that in the
you're done.
video. Yeah, I didn't say that, but I said that.
Yeah, I
Okay,
was
so
gonna say you were asking about wax moth earlier. I
yeah.
was curious how he knew so much about wax moth because if he finds one, he just gives up the whole hive. And and I and I've got all of his old equipment. He's just like, hey, this one's got two wax moth on it. Can you come get it?
That's
Randy brings the 18 wheeler to take all my stuff away.
okay. Now there are some things because this is a serious end of it. I think but you guys get stung constantly, like especially like Randy. You were underneath that. I don't know if it was an Airstream trailer or what, but you were just getting stung constantly.
Yeah.
Has there been a point where you took some of these things that you did have a reaction to where even after all of these years of working with them, has there been a time when you were concerned maybe about the health risk of being stung so many times by something you were dealing with?
No, the only thing that's ever caused me to react that gave me any kind of concern was yellow jackets. I've been stung about 150 times in a day with southern yellow jackets, and that had a pretty hard effect on me. But with honeybees, I've probably been stung maybe 90 or 100 times in a day, and the worst that happens is next morning my eyes are a little crusty, and that's the it's funny, but that's the biggest. Other than if you get stung anywhere around here, you're gonna have a little puffiness around the eyes, but aside from that, I've never had any kind of reaction.
Okay, well that's good news.
Yeah.
Jeff, have you had an issue where you
Well,
had a
Randy doesn't wear
response?
a suit. I wear a suit almost all the time.
You know
I'll
what I
take it off.
noticed, and I noticed the suit you were wearing with the Top-Bar Hive. It was Guardian Bee Apparel.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Terry at Guardian Bee Apparel for his vented suits.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're awesome.
He's
That's
not
I swear by
sponsoring
him.
anything we're doing here, but that's a good company and a good suit, and I was glad to see you wearing it. And Randy, you've got one, right? You just don't wear it.
Oh, I've got probably 4 or 5 Guardian suits.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I keep them in the truck,
Did
and
you
so if
see
it,
that they came out with the new clear view veils on
yeah,
those? Did
Mike
you
he showed
Barry
he
reporting
showed
on.
it to me at Nobby.
did you try one out,
No, but
Jeff?
I've got the
No.
I've got the Easy C,
Yeah.
but I haven't tried either one really.
Did you install the Easy C in one of your
No,
veils?
I told her I would do a video on it. I haven't done it yet, but I will. I will be doing a
You're as
video on it.
bad as me because I have the same thing. It's been on my shelf for almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah,
And we need to get those out. We need to put them in
yeah,
your favorite. Because the problem with me is I think, is this going to be my favorite veil? Because you install it and it's done. It's
yeah.
in. So I can't decide which veil to put it on. Do you have one, Jeff?
No, I saw world famous Mike Barry was sporting it the other evening on his cutout.
And
Um,
did you like it?
it was raining, so I think he had issues with fog.
Condensation fogging.
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't know. I have an Easy C laying right here somewhere, but for those people who don't know what we're talking about, it's just a glass or plexiglass window on the front of the veil, so you're not
And
looking through screen.
it's actually a really hard lucite that doesn't scratch very easy, so it's supposed to hold up for a long time, but it has a frame and everything. And well, I'm gonna get the lead out. I'm gonna do it for the supervisor. I'm gonna make him an Easy C. I think we'll do a
There you
little tutorial on that. We're all in for it, by the way, in January because he's 10. He'll be 10, which he knows already that he's allowed to go. And I'm running out of reasons to keep him home.
go.
So, but Jeff, you've never been in trouble with the number of stings you've gotten.
No, I don't get stung anywhere as much as Randy does. I mean,
He does
I'll
get stung
get,
though.
oh yeah, I get
He gets stung enough to build a resistance to him.
Okay.
He doesn't swell up like
no, I
a
don't.
first year beekeeper.
No, I don't
Okay.
swell up and I don't itch or it doesn't bother me at all. I just don't like getting stung, on my ears or my nose. Oh, I hate that. I hate that.
Inside the nostril. Yeah.
Oh, it's bad.
Right
It's bad.
there. Right there. Okay, so we're fast forwarding. It's 15 years from now. What does your beekeeping look like 15 years from now? What are you doing? What kind of hive do you want to use? And what does your practice look like? Either one of you.
Go ahead, Randy.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I already know, Fred, because I've already thought of it. I am going to have me maybe 4 long horizontals. That's it. I'm a big fan, and it's not just going to be a horizontal. I'm going to have an insulated horizontal. I'm a big believer in insulating your hives. I know it makes all the difference in the world, and then to keep them under cover, whether it just be a roof, a shed, but I'm 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 not going to be lifting up bee boxes. Long hives are ideal for old people, and you can work them. There's no problem. You work single frames. They're just beautiful, and bees do well in them. That it was my from my observations of watching bees in joy space that convinced me of that configuration is a good configuration.
Mhm.
And so that's what sold me on it from what I saw in houses. And
And
then how good.
yeah, just so people are clear what you're describing when you say joist, we're talking a horizontal floor joist cavity, and the bees are in there, and they have a tiny single entrance, and
Right.
they fanned out right into that structure. So I like that answer. Randy, what do you have?
I I'm very similar in that I have a design on paper that I'm going to build, and I don't know, it's top bar ish, but there's no bars.
Give away your secret.
I don't want to give away my secret,
Top
but
bar-ish with no
it's
bars.
yeah, it's going to be something that nobody else is doing. It'll be a super simple build, but nobody else is doing it. I'm just going to leave everybody hanging on this. But it's going to be the same configuration as a floor joist space. It's going to be deep and long, and same reason Jeff said. That's what we see all the time. That's where we see our biggest hives is in a horizontal configuration, and they're not necessarily long tunnels. They're especially in truss type construction where they can expand wide.
Yeah.
Dude, those get so stinking big. So in a ladder truss or any kind of truss configuration where there's no limitation anyway except for the depth, they're normally about 20 inches deep max. Those get massive. So I haven't figured out if I want to go long and narrow just because that's going to be more manageable. part of it's just making it manageable for me, but part of it is also I want to build what I see out there in feral colonies that have no need for any type of intervention as far as expansion of space or treatment or anything else. And so they can run without me fooling with them, except for if I want to extract any honey off of them, I can. And other than that, it would be almost hands off. And I can, and it, because there'll be foundationless, I can do cut comb for queens. I can do all kind of different queen rearing methods. It's harder to do on plastic foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And
would both of you say that is there much of a difference in honey production with a vertical space and as compared to a horizontal space?
I don't know if there's any
This is a
difference.
big debate among beekeepers. So
I don't think there's necessarily
of observations of cutouts.
I don't know if there in feral colonies, I don't know if there's any difference, but it's easier to harvest in a horizontal as opposed to a vertical.
Okay.
My opinion, I love a horizontal, but if I'm going to do honey production, I want a Langstroth.
Yeah.
A vertical Langstroth.
Yeah.
And why do you say that?
The long hives will give you honey, but I think a Langstroth you can get more honey, especially if you're keeping with the flow. If you're keeping up with the flow and giving them frames to draw instead of drawn out, just fill up. Mike Barry is a really good example of how a guy that's really good at it, you can really get a lot of honey out of it. And
Okay.
I've seen it. I've seen it. And I say this all the time, that I love the way a long hive you can work it, but if I'm going to go honey, I'm going to go Langstroth.
Vertical Langstroth.
Vertical, yes.
Okay, final question of the day. Then you guys can all go home.
I'll add to that just a little
Okay.
bit. And if you're considering all configurations, the Langstroth, horizontal or vertical, is really the only way to go because everything is built to accommodate that frame.
Right.
Extractors, uncappers, everything. So it's hard to kind of look at anything else.
Yeah.
If you're doing it at a scale other than one or two hives.
Okay, and then you made me forget what my last question of the day was going to be.
Last question.
Are we having dessert?
No. Have some.
Cherry cobbler.
Man, I forgot what my final thing. Oh, is there ever a time when you? Yeah, that's Easy Ox. Randy's holding up. Good company for your oxalic acid. That's interesting that you have that. Why, as a treatment-free beekeeper, do you have Easy Ox, and why are you promoting it?
Because I'm a hypocrite.
Okay. All right. For people that don't know, oxalic acid, they come in tablets and they come in powder from Easy Ox, veteran-owned company, and good prices.
They're easy, as the name implies, they're an easy way to use oxalic acid.
Okay, final question of the night. Do you ever feed your bees? And if you do, why and what do you feed?
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, you first.
My bees get fed all the time. Anytime I come home with cutout comb, they're open fed cutout comb, and it freaks a lot of people out. They're like, "You're bringing home disease." Well, they weren't diseased when I cut them out, but they eat cutout comb by the tons, and
But it's usually out of the back of your pickup truck.
yeah, or I throw the bags out near our rendering station where we're going to render the wax down.
Yeah.
But if I in the early spring, if I look at them and they look like they need to be fed, I'll feed them a light sugar water mix. Usually by the time I'm looking at them, the spring tie is already blooming, and the red maples are starting up, and so we generally don't have a need to feed.
Yeah. So when you do the light sugar, you're saying 1-to-1 sugar syrup, or you go lighter than that?
Or lighter.
Or lighter. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff?
So I I do not feed. That being said, that I do not feed. When I do a removal um, in in like the dearth times, um, I feed the bees honey. I give them honey, uh, and that it's only to nurse them along. Once we get through any kind of dearth, they're on their own. So I do um, I do help a little bit initially, but it's not long term because I'm my days of feeding bees of mixing sugar, that's over with. I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
And I made the point this morning, Fred, in the video. Here we are, March 9th, and of course I'm talking about our area right here.
Mhm.
And where I'm doing these boards, putting these boards in, and the top box, a 60-pound top box, and the bottom box 20 pounds. So we have this big weight difference, right? Well, you know, and I know there's beekeepers that say, well, you need to put honey in that box. Well, I firmly believe, I mean, and this is my belief. You have to consider the time of where it's at right now. So like right now, I've got that big differential between weights in the top box and the bottom box. Well, my bottom box is going to be generally my queenless box. So all of my workforce is going to be centered into this box right here. Whereas my queen, who's in the top box, she's got all this honey. She's going to lose her field bees. They're going to be going to the bottom. Well, if they're going to the bottom, they got all this space for now them. We got stuff out there. So these bees that really don't have a lot of brood to feed, they'll be able to gather this nectar that's getting ready to come in, and everything's going to be fine. I think people jump the gun. They get too anxious to want to help the bees instead of, like, the same thing with the mite wash. Well, why are you going to feed your bees? Look at where we are. Yeah, you might be a little bit slow right now, but you're going to catch up. It's going to catch up. So I didn't worry about that 40-pound difference because I'm going to have the workforce in there and we got a flow coming. So it's going to work out. Yeah, there's a big difference, but look at what we're doing and look at what's going on around us, and it'll put your mind to rest.
Mhm. Now, when you say you feed them honey, how are you delivering that to them?
It's internal feeding when I do that, and I just put that above them. I just in that hole in the inner cover, I just put a
A
quart
jar.
jar up there,
Okay.
and
All
feed
right.
them.
All right. So, any final words from either of you? Final advice? Anything you want to share?
I say, Fred, and I always say that the world needs as many beekeepers as it can get. And I truly believe that because what bees provide for humanity. So having beekeepers, it's very important. But the other part about being a beekeeper is the sustainability of being a beekeeper. The challenges that beekeeper, as a beekeeper, what you face, how you endure those challenges. It's very likened to life itself. How you face life's challenges. And you do it with a firm belief and hope because it's really farming, and farmers have great reliance. They have faith. They believe that it's going to work out, and beekeeping is no different. You really have to believe in it. And then the other part of that formula is you have to maintain that fun aspect of being a beekeeper. Beekeeping should be fun. That's why you got into it in the beginning, and 50 years down the line, that's why you still should be continuing because it's fun, it's intriguing that you always find the newness of bees, and they offer that newness if we are open to receive it.
Hmm. Good job, Randy.
That was amazing. I just had a stupid story, but that was so good. I'm just gonna keep
Yeah.
my mouth shut.
Pretend you never said a thing. Just go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say it's swarm season, and if you're in the mindset of trapping or catching swarms, get out there and try it. You never know till you try. And I have a story about when we took my sister fishing. My little sister went fishing with us when we were kids. She's 7 or 8 years younger than me. She's 4 or 5 years old. We're out there fishing a little brim pond, and we're telling her how to do it. And so we've got all these rules for swarm catching. Well, we're telling her how to catch these fish. You got to hold the pole still. A 5-year-old is not going to listen. She's over there whipping the water, hanging up in the weeds, and we're just trying to stay away from her. So we're out catching a few fish here and there. We know she's not going to catch anything, but eventually she pulls something up and she squeals. She's excited, and I look over there and there's a little brim hanging on her hook. It's a little brim hook and he had anything on it in an hour. And I go over there and look, and she's surprised. I'm surprised, and she had caught this little brim right in the hiney hole. And so we're all surprised, and the fish, I'm sure, was super surprised. But my point to that is, no matter how wrong you're doing it, there's always a chance.
That's a good story. All right. Well, I want to thank you both for giving us 2 hours, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
Really good conversation and information. And I enjoy both of your channels. The stuff that you're doing is really informative and entertaining at the same time. So what's a better way to deliver your wrangling of bees? And I know Jeff is beating you out right now, Randy, for swarm collection, but
By one.
you'll have an opportunity
on the way.
Now it's a numbers game. The first one. So we look forward to seeing those through the year. So thanks a lot, you guys. It's been a really good conversation.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for having us.
Yep.
We really enjoyed it.
Great evening. Good seeing you again, Randy. And I'll see you on the battlefield, dude.
Yes, sir.
Okay.